Binance's on-chain balance remains high in the midst of a lot of drama, including a CFTC suit against Binance that dropped this past week. Joining us to break this down is Nansen Customer Success Manager Jason Meng. Welcome, Jason. Jason, so it seems like Binance is probably quite happy about this data point. I think I saw CZ tweeting our report about it. But let's just start with the biggest picture here. How important is this data point, right? Because like when you look at it on the surface, it's like, okay, Binance still has all this money on chain. Does that mean that Binance is okay? I mean, what does this mean? Or is this something that there still could be another shoe to drop, or there could be something behind the scenes? Again, on the surface, looks like great news, but is it really?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Obviously, we are a data provider. We want to try to be as unbiased and just bring clarity and transparency on chain. So we don't want to make any directional calls at Nansen. We've had some Twitter posts, and we are keeping up with the outflow situation live as it happens. At the moment, from what we're seeing, in terms of just net outflows, we've seen about 2 billion total over from Binance in the past 7 days. But that's just like a aggregation of like the big picture, which in the overall picture, Binance has had about 7.2 billion outflows or inflows with 9.3 billion outflows. So that's where the difference comes from. They still have a lot of people since 7 days ago. And that was about the week's full of data. In terms of the past 24 hours, we've had about 14 million net flow or outflow from the past 24 hours. So that might be a little bit different there, but in terms of, are we worried? Are we not? I don't think we can give like a firm directional stance on it, but we're going to monitor the situation.
Let me just reframe that question though. I know you can't be worried or not worried or happy or not happy. That's not what I mean. I just mean like, looking at this data sort of on the surface, is there, I guess a better question is it how indicative is it of sort of like Binance's finances and Binance's health, or are there other sort of things that could come out that could maybe add another dimension to this picture?
Yeah. Any other dimensions? Maybe we can chat about that a little bit. From what we know right now, their treasury is quite healthy. Since the beginning, they've always held about 65 billion or so on their reserves. And as Andrew, one of my colleagues, mentioned out prior in a Wall Street Journal article, Binance has processed up to 3 billion in outflows just in a day. And so 2 billion over a week is not really something that's out of the norm.
So 9 billion. So I kind of want to get back to that because, as you said, it's net outflows, but it still means that there was something. You said it was 9 billion versus 7 billion, correct? That was the
yes.
So how does that compare to? I don't want to say a typical week, but I mean, have we ever seen data like that before with Binance, these kind of sizes, 9 billion versus 7 billion, and again, what that 7 billion of inflow, where is that from?
Yeah, so exact sources, I'd have to dig into that and prepare a more comprehensive report. All we see on chain is just total inflow going into the exchange and total inflow coming out. So you're absolutely right. They've had about 9 billion total outflowing, 7 billion inflow. As I mentioned prior, Binance has processed up to 3 billion outflows before in the past. That I think one of their peak days. Yes, net outflows.
Net outflows, not total, because total. But have you ever seen these kind of 9 billion total outflows like that before? Is that something we've seen before over a 7-day period?
Personally, I have not seen that much, but it seems like they're processing it just fine, and I'd have to maybe get some takes from my colleagues if they've. I haven't monitored Binance as much as I'd like to in the outflows department.
I also saw in the report that it's nothing compared to the outflows in February, so maybe you could draw that as a comparison.
Yes, I believe that was referencing one of the peak days where they were processing, like, as I mentioned, just up to 3 billion outflows in that day. And that's why there's not really any out of the norm situation happening.
I guess the question I have here is, with the outflows from FTX, I mean, they were in the 8 billion and then they folded. And we're not seeing that happen with Binance. And so is that because, does that speak to the resiliency of Binance, or, they just have so much of the market share in the crypto markets that it would be very tough to see any weakness.
Yeah, so interesting question. I don't work at Binance, of course, so I would like to believe, they've long been a pillar of the crypto community in terms of how they handle situations like this. And so far, them processing all withdrawals it's been pretty firm, and I like to believe it would keep going that way for the sake of our industry as a whole. Obviously, as you mentioned, they are the biggest player in this space, just as an exchange.
Okay.
Now, the outflows that we're looking at here, these are all Bitcoin and other currencies, correct? Do we have a breakdown of what everything is?
Yeah, I can give you a breakdown live on air if you'd like. So when I mentioned total outflows, that was multi-chain. So that includes everything from Ethereum, BNB, Avalanche. Those are, of course, EVM chains, but we also include Phantom and other L2s. And I'd have to dig into the dev team exactly what tokens they track, but we also have value just by Ethereum, which is a little bit less in terms of 7-day outflow at just 1.8 billion. So about 200 million shy, but it's not a huge difference there.
And is the trigger here really that CFTC complaint against Binance?
I would like to, I think it's easy to attribute that there are a lot of traders with a lot of fear from prior circumstances. But I would say it's not that widespread because I think you would see a lot higher volume. But so far, everything seems to be quite resilient. And we've seen prices rebound as well, just the same.
And that CFTC complaint also mentions that allegedly CZ manages or owns 300 house accounts that could be trading or wash trading against Binance users. Is that something that Nansen can track as well?
It would be something we'd like to work on, just in the ethos of bringing transparency to a crypto in general. And it'd be something that we'd have an interesting conversation about, if possible, but I could speak on it any further.
What you do have you're able to track at least some of the wallets that you can attribute to Binance, correct? Do you know, first of all, how are you able to determine which wallets are definitely Binance's? Second of all, the geographic breakdown. Obviously, crypto is a global network, of course, but nonetheless, are you able to have any idea of some of the geographic breakdowns at all of some of these flows?
Yeah, second question first. Unfortunately, I don't think we have geographic data yet because that would be like a breach of IP. So we definitely don't, we don't track more than what's public on chain. And in the first part, in terms of how we aggregate or like wallets, so that is part of our black box and it's our secret sauce for why people subscribe to Nansen. But it's a mix of different strategies. Part of it's algorithmic, part of it is like people doing the scouting. And all I can say is, we're not 100% accurate all the time, but we are the fastest in the market, I believe, to correct them and to make sure our data is up to date. But we do, that is sort of like, I can't dive too much into it on how we aggregate wallets together.
Yes, please tell us your trade secrets. We'd like that.
Some critics have compared BNB token to FTT token. And just to recap, FTT token was the native token of FTX exchange. And due to CoinDesk reporting, we found that there was a lot of FTT token on their sister prop trading firm Alameda's balance sheet, but just exploding the value of the firm more than what the markets eventually determined was not sustainable. And eventually the FTX exchange had a run and the exchange collapsed. Now, critics thought the same thing could happen to BNB, or that BNB token or Binance was doing something similar. But we haven't seen anything resemble what happened to FTX. So that Binance's tokens are not collapsing the exchange. Is that, I don't know, are you seeing anything on chain confirming that, maybe they are more resilient or, they're not experiencing the same troubles?
Yeah, so again, we try to monitor things as they happen and just be unbiased and not have like a directional bias there. I think the FTT situation is quite different than the current Binance situation. Just infrastructurally, I think at the time, FTT had different sets of perception about it. It was being used as collateral and other like loans, and FTX was engaging in what turned out to be quite obviously shady business practices. So at the moment, all I've kind of said is that what we've seen on chain is that Binance's treasury is healthy. It is what it used to be. There's not been any dramatic change. And so we're going to monitor outflows and as they go and report on it live as we can.
All right. Well, Jason, thank you so much for joining us. That was Nansen Customer Success Manager Jason Meng with the data.